You're The rags to riches narrative is an illusion designed to perpetuate the myth that anyone can achieve extraordinary wealth and status through sheer determination. Using Taylor Swift and Jay-Z as case studies, this essay will examine how privilege, connections, and calculated marketing rather than pure talent or grit drive success in the entertainment industry. Before we get started, I want to thank my patrons Aaron Lean, Patricia Stepanovich, and Cooking with Silence. I'm sorry for butchering your names. I really tried. Aaron, I saw pronunciations of Lean and Lane. Couldn't figure it out. You let me know in the comments which one it is, and fingers crossed I don't butcher anyone's names next time. Patricia, I'm just going to have to say your name 1,500 times in between now and the next video in hopes that I don't botch it. But yeah, I got you. You belong with me. Despite claims of coming from humble beginnings in Reading, PA, Taylor Swift had several significant advantages. For starters, she comes from a very well-off family, her father being a financial advisor for Swift Group, his own company that works under the banking giant Merrill Lynch. It's stated that the elder Swift transferred his business to Tennessee when he saw the potential that Taylor had, but while it's true that the family and company moved to Tennessee, it wasn't exactly a shot-in-the-dark situation. Truthfully, the Swift family had connections in the music industry. Taylor Swift might be a lot of things, but underdog, which is how she was referred to during her 1989 tour, is so far from the truth it's astounding that it ever made rounds. Like a lot of country singers, that's how she broke in, Taylor Swift grew up on a farm. It wasn't a subsistence farm in a rough part of Kentucky, but a Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania. Her mother worked in finance, a New Yorker story says, and her father, a descendant of 3 generations of bank presidents, is a stockbroker for Merrill Lynch. He had bought the tree farm from a client. In Swift's hometown, she told the magazine's Lizzie Whitcomb it mattered what kind of designer handbag you brought to school. The woman drove a convertible Lexus to school, and her father bought a stake in Big Machine Music right around the time that Taylor was signed by them. Now, she's not the first and certainly won't be the last child of wealthy parents to buy them access to celebrity. But it's kind of frustrating watching her pretend to be the salt of her earth Americana princess when she's as processed as American cheese. And understand, I truly don't care enough about Taylor Swift to dislike her. I honestly only know one song from about 20 years ago. She came, she saw, she conquered. Dope. Good for her. My problem comes from a narrative associated with the fame. It reinforces these harmful ideas involving the ceaseless grind and a bootstrap mentality. And side note, the term pull oneself up by your own bootstraps was originally used to describe how impossible a certain feat was to pull off. If you were to try and pull yourself up from your bootstraps, you're going to fall on your butt. If you succeed in life and pull yourself up, you did the impossible. Something to be commended, but not held as an example of good or hard work and gumption that anyone dedicated enough can pull off. The rags to riches story is as American as apple pie and racism, and like the nuclear family, the goal is to drive capitalism. It's integral to the system that we believe that the next big opportunity is around the corner, or right past that promotion or performance bonus. If you work hard enough, if you trust the system enough, you too can be like Taylor Swift. Her rebranding from country gal to pop star is an amazing strategy from her PR campaign. Sprinkle in some LGBTQ support and shift the tempo of her music and boom, you got yourself a pop star. But the internet is a living entity with a long memory. There were a few lingering dingy spots on an otherwise sparkling white image that she and her team needed to scrub away. So in 2017, she deleted all her social media. But prior to this, there was the entire Kim Kardashian and Kanye West fiasco where she pretended that her little feelings were hurt when Kanye dropped a line that he had already cleared with her.
I don't think it's mean.
Okay, then let me hear it.
Okay. It says, to all my South Side niggas that know me best, I feel like Taylor Swift might owe me sex.
That's not mean.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is the thing, right?
You see, she forced her music into the forefront while shifting how she interacted with the public, which is something else I'll be getting into in a second. But it's all, and I mean all, a calculated production to give the fans the Taylor Swift experience. She even coined the term Taylurker, yuck, to describe how she follows fans' social media accounts to see what they post about her. Almost every celebrity of that caliber has a PR team. Big deal. But I wonder how fans would feel or bond with Swift if they knew she grew up in the kind of affluence that most Americans dream of. The rags to riches story is as American as bootstraps and billionaire tax breaks, a fantasy designed to keep the masses grinding in the hopes that their big break is just around the corner. The system depends on this belief, on the idea that if you work hard enough, if you trust the process, you too can make it big. Swift's rise wasn't just about talent or hustle. Don't get me wrong, it was. but it was also cushioned by financial support and a media machine. And yet the narrative was her as a self-made star convinces working class people to see themselves in the ultra-rich to align with billionaires instead of questioning why they never reached the level themselves. This illusion does more than just keep the system running, it makes criticism of the famous almost impossible. When someone like Swift racks up obscene wealth, buys up properties that drive up housing prices, or burns up private jet fuel like it's air freshener, fans run a defender convinced that she earned it. But it's all part of the show. Celebrities of her caliber don't just exist, they are produced, curated, and rebranded as needed. And yet their audience eats it up, unable or unwilling to see that the system she represents wasn't built for us to succeed. It was built to keep us watching, working, and waiting for a moment that will never come. Taylor Swift also benefits from being a moderately attractive, cisgender, heterosexual white woman. This makes her more marketable and broadly palatable to many of her fans, and like many artists, she benefits from a structure designed to place her accomplishments above those of her darker phenotype. And I wonder if I have to add this part every time, because whether I do or don't, there's always someone in the comments calling me a hater. But let's try and make this clear. I don't care about a single person I'm referring to. There are contextual examples that their audience will recognize when dissecting the overall themes of the rags to riches myth. This isn't to take anything away from them, but to dismantle the capitalist myth of realness and grind that puts all these people in positions of power. If the country was really built on merit and hard work, every single parent would be pulling six figures. No, what builds these artists are carefully controlled narratives and corporate support. Taylor Swift has always been deliberate about her image. From the early days as a country underdog to her transition to one of the biggest pop stars in the world, every move was carefully considered. She's mastered the art of controlling the narrative, shaping her legacy in a way that keeps her both relatable and untouchable. But when it comes to working with black women in music, her track record at best is sparse and at the worst, opportunistic. In the span of her decades-long career, Taylor has only collaborated with one black woman. Just one. Ice Spice. And it happened right after her then-boyfriend Matt Healy was caught laughing at racist jokes about black women.
So if you're like me and you had no idea, let's talk about it. I believe this was in February. He did a podcast where he was saying stuff like this about Ice Spice. Inuit Spice Girl, this chubby Chinese lady, like what? Just shut up.
She's right. Like this rapper.
She's the rapper
that has
Spice. Inuit Spice Girl. Just this chubby Chinese lady. Yeah, I'm rapping music. Do they talk like that? Do Inuits talk like that?
They don't talk with a Chinese accent.
They talk like more Hawaiians.
Timing, to put it lightly, was suspicious. It wasn't just a collaboration. It was a calculated move to shift the conversation, a way to quietly distance herself from controversy without ever having to address it outright. And that's the thing about Taylor. When a moment calls for accountability, she often chooses optics instead. Then there's Travis Kelce. For years, he was known for primarily dating black women, and now in the midst of an ongoing discussion about Taylor's racial blind spots, she's suddenly in a very public relationship with him. Is this proof of anything? No. But does it add to the pattern? Absolutely. Because this point is not just about who she collaborates with, but about how her relationships, both personal and professional, seem to serve as shields against difficult conversations. This isn't a call to cancel Taylor Swift, it's an invitation to examine the reality behind a carefully crafted image. The Ice Spice feature, the Miss Americana narrative, the Travis Kelce relationship, none of these things exist in a vacuum. They tell a story where allyship seems to be more about self-preservation than genuine solidarity. And the thing is, Taylor doesn't need to prove she isn't racist. What she needs to do is show up. Not just when it's easy, not just when it's beneficial, but when it actually matters. Until then, we have to keep asking the question, why does one of the most powerful women in music still need to be convinced to care?
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name Ace to the OP. I used to move snowflakes by the OC.
Jay-Z may be one of the best examples of the rags to riches myth, and while Hov did grow up in the projects and then transition into the man we know today, it was anything but the grind we think of, and that doesn't mean he didn't put in the work. But that does mean the legacy of the hustler, the rap icon, to business tycoon does not come without getting your hands dirty or stepping on the careers of others. The harm from this narrative comes from the young and impressionable believing that to get it like Jay-Z they have to move the way he did, and keeping it real, not many people leave the game unscathed, let alone with all their money. But the hustler ethos surrounding Jay-Z has been greatly embellished. Hov allegedly served a few fiends, but that was really it. He was a pack boy that hung around bigger dealers that will go unnamed. Ain't no snitching. But like I said before, a lot of the stories that come from these rappers are not their stories. They belong to the community. You weren't facing 15 for a brick in a trunk, your man's was. This is important as it all leads into the greater than all I earned it capitalist myth. If anything, it shows his true networking skills. because his game must have been strong to pull Beyonce, who was beginning an explosive solo career, which has been argued to be doing far more for Jay-Z. I remember the hood debates over if it was for attention or fame or if it was love, and the answer is yes.
And I know what Jay does, so I'm not surprised. Like, it's not hard to close a deal when you walk in the room with Beyonce. You could close a deal. You understand what I'm saying? Like, she's the biggest firepower in that moment. It's easy. The celebrity trumps everything.
Right.
But the thing,
though it does lead into areas involving age gaps and grooming, with Beyonce being a little over 19 when they got together compared to Jay-Z's 30. But some have argued that it was this proximity that boosted Ho's public profile. I mean, their joint projects and public appearances did far more for his visibility and credibility. You know, the hustler that bagged a cute young John. And I'm about to use the M word that makes so many dudes check out, but misogyny. Misogyny, nigga. Misogyny in the music industry frames him as a dominant partner despite Beyonce's unmatched talent and work ethic. There was a decade where no one came anywhere near Beyonce on the R&B charts, yet while Jay-Z has dropped some bangers, he has never really ran the rap game. What he has done is shaped a narrative of being bigger than a rap game while maintaining the illusion of making moves in the street. And regardless of how much he allegedly moved, he ain't been nowhere near a brick since like 1992. But before I continue, I want you to understand that like Taylor Swift, I'm not trying to take away from his accomplishments. What I am calling is BS on the idea of being self-made. They still needed to work once getting that shot at the bigs. My problem comes from the idea that merit places people where they land on the success ladder and not access to connections and capital. And speaking of capital, Hove is not for the culture. The Brooklyn Nets have the Barclays Center, but hundreds of residents and businesses were displaced. And out of the $6 billion that went to redevelopment, how much do you think they got paid? Probably a pittance, if anything at all. But Jay-Z, who acted as a spokesman and at the time owned a fraction of ownership in the arena, let me tell you, the developers needed Jay-Z as a branding tool far more than they needed his money, because he owned 0.5% of the team and sold it pretty much right after the arena was built and butts were in seats. And that's far from the beginning or ending of Jay-Z's shady business dealings.
Used to be my dog, you was in my left titty. Scream, ride or die, I thought you would die with me.
Now that was a track from DMX. It was in my top 5 rappers of all time list. Now he was signed to Def Jam before Jay-Z became a major player at the label. But when Jay-Z retired from rap and took over Def Jam, everything was supposed to be cool. You know, a brother actually from the 5 boroughs that was in charge of a hip-hop label. A huge one, right? So here's a list of his early accomplishments. For starters, if you're younger than 30, you probably don't understand just how big DMX was in the late 90s. There are countless stories of X closing out a show and turning the roof off a joint. He had 5 albums all charted at the top 200 on Billboard, the first rapper to do so, mind you, and he was potentially, if not the top hip-hop earner on Def Jam's roster. But instead of getting an album promo, you know what, I'll let X explain it.
With Rough Riders, what made DMX stop recording and we being truthful, because we want to know. We haven't heard from X in a long time.
Y'all know the story already, you know what I'm saying? Used to be my dog, you was in my left titty, you know, scream, ride or die, I thought you would die with me, you know. What happened was, you know, like I said, I had the crazy track record at Def Jam, everything was good. You know, I go to do the 6th album, and, you know,
Jay-Z became president.
Yeah. You know, when he first got the job, he hit me with the call like, yo, dog, inmates is running the building, like, yo, you good? Finish the album, shoot the video. What happened? Niggas go on vacation and, you know, we don't know. What you mean you don't know? How do you listen to a whole album, pick a single, shoot a video, then don't know? Okay, I see what's really good. You're trying to eliminate the competition. You know, because at first you retire, you know, then get me off the label, now you're back rapping again. Okay. It's all good. That's all good.
Later, Jay-Z gets into a beef with Cristal, and, you know, okay, sure. You don't want our image associated with your beverage, don't take our money either. Tommy Hilfiger tried the same stunt in the 90s and lost a huge chunk of black business. But yeah, the acting president of a record label not doing a record label thing. A little after that, it was time to release fellow Def Jam artist Method Man's 4th studio album, 421, a day after. And instead of pushing the lead single for the album or setting up a music video budget, Jay-Z was putting himself in the limelight. He did the same thing with Lady Sovereign, kneecapping her release by not doing any promos, and it's impossible to forget what he did to Dame Dash. And I don't like Dame. I always thought he was a shifty little weasel, but damn if I wasn't so distracted by the weasel that I didn't see the snake. To simplify things, Dame wanted Rockefeller to maintain autonomy within a new business structure. Jay the opportunist thought otherwise and undercut Dame at every move, and he had the extra leverage. And while Dame was called every level of jealous in the book, if you listen to his interviews, he doesn't sound jealous. He sounds hurt.
How many betrayals we talked about with Jay? This ain't the first one, but this the first one we talking about because the only one affected us. So for me, I'm like, big deal. He everybody over. Jermaine Dupree's stupid for listening to him. That's what I think. We all know Jay. So once he does what he did, how he did Rockefeller, why do you think he'd do anything else? That's Jay. Those principles don't mean anything. Jay runs with the bag, period. That's it. All right, cool. So if you with that man, that's on you.
This is something that they built together that just became a shell of itself. And who can you name from that initial Rockefeller run that made a fraction of what Jay did? What happened to Bleak? What happened to Beans? What happened to Cassidy? The same thing that happened to everyone else in his orbit. They outlived their purpose. And while I will never view someone getting a bag in a negative light, I do take the issue with getting there by stepping on the backs of others and pretending to be this god among hustlers. This bothers me because it takes the capitalist system that's already ripe with exploitation and wraps it in this narrative of self-reliance and success. Wait, do you think it's coincidental that Hove looks at the word capitalist like it's a slur? It's because he wants to avoid any criticism from black people, implying he's doing it for us.
You know, before it was the American dream. Pull yourself out of bootstraps and you can make it in America. All these lies that America told us our whole life. And then when we start getting it, they try to lock us out of it. They start inventing words like, capitalists and, things like that. I mean, we've been called nigger and monkeys and shit. I don't care. Those words y'all come up with, y'all got to come up with stronger words when I say.
But for me, it is a slur when I call someone a capitalist. This is exactly how I mean it. Right along with crook, snake, backstabber, sellout, and all negatives that someone somewhere were used to describe Jay-Z. And no, it's not hating on his success, nameless commenter that didn't finish the video. It's hating the mythos that A, you need to be cutthroat to succeed, and B, that all you need is hard work. But no one, not a single person to ever reach multiple hundreds of millions kept their hands clean. Somewhere down the line, laborers got exploited. Figures were pulled to get leverage, and someone at the top added a few bills to their pockets while everyone starved around them. He partnered with nameless corporate overlord number 7 to bring Bitcoin Academy, a program of financial literacy to Marcy projects. In 2022, after Bitcoin took a nosedive. And thankfully, most residents didn't fall for it. It's kind of late to be doing that thing when people are trying to hold onto their dollars and everything is so expensive, said 58-year-old retiree Myra Raspberry. People don't want to be investing money knowing that they might have a chance of losing it. Raspberry said she had seen the news reports about Bitcoin's crash and had no interest in participating in the course. Every dime I got go to rent, phone, TV, and internet, and I don't have money like that to be losing. If I did, I'd try to invest in something that's more reliable, like the basketball game last night. I'm going to win something from that. Not to mention the efforts that went into engaging with the community, with flyers literally just dumped in the ground on the lobby, and that's wild. There's this weird thought experiment going on with some folks asking if you'd rather have $500,000 or a meeting with Jay-Z. The correct answer is supposed to be a meeting with Jay-Z. The goal of this is to demonstrate some sort of forethought about business planning and goals. But realistically, every single person should take the cash. Why? Because only the poor and the middle class play with these hypotheticals, meaning we are less likely to have any startup capital, a business plan including a 3 to 5 year prospectus, an organizational structure including an anticipated ROI, that's a return on investment. Picking Jay-Z isn't going to net you anything more than a casual smile, if that. Without a clear benefit to him, Hove isn't likely to do you or anyone else any favors. Don't forget it took him nearly 2 decades to stand up for Beyonce. That two-piece might have opened his eyes up a bit. It's a selective alignment with issues, a few broad gestures, and a reliance on black culture that keep him on a pedestal. Mind you, a pedestal he didn't reach all on his own. He left everyone in the dust that didn't serve his purpose. I'm working on something separate involving the Philly hip-hop scene where I'll get into some of the grittier details, but aforementioned dealings with DMX, Dame Dash, and his handling of album releases are far from the only occurrences. The idea of being self-made is one of the biggest scams sold to the public, and 2 brief example cases highlight this: Rihanna and the Kardashians. Rihanna's billionaire status isn't just a testament to her talent. It's a result of a well-oiled marketing machine that turned Fenty Beauty into a global empire. While Fenty was praised for his inclusivity, his success isn't proof of the beauty industry suddenly caring about black and brown women. It's proof that diversity is profitable when packaged correctly. Fenty isn't revolutionary because it uses women of color in its branding. It's just better at making inclusivity look authentic while still existing within the same capitalist framework that historically excluded those very women. At the end of the day, the brand thrives not because it dismantled barriers, but because it capitalized on an underserved market. Then there's the Kardashians, the ultimate beneficiaries of wealth and media privilege, who have mastered the art of repackaging nepotism as hustle. They don't have any real skills outside of marketing themselves. Every business venture, every endorsement, every so-called entrepreneurial move is built on their ability to sell an aesthetic. They aren't designers, inventors, or innovators. They are influencers with generational wealth who convince the world they built something. And nowhere was this more blatant than when Kylie Jenner was crowned the youngest self-made billionaire, despite doing none of the actual labor to warrant such a title. Her beauty brand Kylie Cosmetics was bankrolled by her already famous family, manufactured by an existing company, and pushed by a massive PR engine. She wasn't out here in the lab formulating lip kits, she was slapping her name on a product and watching it sell. But the public ate it up because we've been conditioned to believe that anyone, even though already rich, can bootstrap their way into billionaire status. The myth of self-made wealth thrives on stories like these, where access, connections, and existing power are conveniently erased, leaving only the illusion that if you work just hard enough, you too can reach the top. The rags to riches story is one of capitalism's most enduring fairy tales, designed to convince the working class that wealth is just a matter of effort. It sells the idea that anyone can become rich if they work hard enough, while conveniently ignoring the systemic advantages that make the journey easier for some and near impossible for others. The truth is, extraordinary wealth isn't something you earn, it's something you accumulate, often by standing on the backs of other people's labor. So-called self-made billionaires don't actually pull themselves up from the bootstraps. They pull on networks of other wealthy individuals, leverage existing resources, and extract value from the work of those below them. They don't climb the ladder, they buy it, own it, and rent out the rungs. This illusion keeps the public invested in a game we were never meant to win, chasing a fantasy of upward mobility while the ultra-rich continue stacking their fortunes off of exploited labor and inherited wealth. The obsession with individual success stories isn't just misleading, it's actively harmful. By glorifying the rise of figures like Taylor Swift or Jay-Z, society shifts the focus from structural issues that keep most people from ever reaching that level. Conversations about extreme wealth rarely acknowledge the realities of income inequality, gentrification, and corporate exploitation because the myth insists that everyone could be rich if they just tried harder. This results in a culture that discourages collective action and keeps people trapped in an endless rat race, competing for scraps instead of questioning why billionaires exist at all. If their narrative implies that anyone can make it, then those who don't simply must not be working hard enough, right? That's the poison of the rags to riches fantasy. It keeps people blaming themselves for a system designed to keep them struggling. The stories of Taylor Swift and Jay-Z aren't proof that the American dream is alive. They're proof that the system rewards those with access, privilege, and connections while selling everyone else the false promise. Their success isn't just about talent or hustle. It's about the ability to navigate an industry that favors the well-connected and exploits the labor of those who will never see that level of wealth. True power is rarely built from the ground up. It's almost always inherited, bought, or gained at the expense of others. The real challenge isn't to celebrate these individual success stories, enjoy your favorites and their talents. It's to critically examine the narratives we consume and to question why we keep buying into the illusion that will benefit the few while keeping the majority chasing a dream that was never meant for us.